Welcome to Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union Spotlight. Today's topic is Hawk Hill. And Hawk Hill is located in the town of Brandon and is connected to the Otter Valley Union High School property. It's owned by the Otter Valley Unified Union School Board and is an educational resource, a recreational resource. It includes conserved land, historical sites, important natural communities, and is a rare wildlife corridor along Route 7, connecting the Adirondacks all the way up to Quebec. A kind of a unique spot. As a recreational resource, it offers trails of varying difficulties for seasonal sports and outdoor wellness activities, as well as hunting, bird watching, and the like. As an educational resource, it's student-focused and student-managed wherever possible. That's why we have Morgan and Sam here today. Jean, our superintendent, is with us, as well as Josh Hart, the teacher from the Muslimu program. I'd like to turn it over to you guys a little bit.
I feel incredibly blessed and honored to be able to utilize the Hawk Hill Forest as an educator. It offers just about anything you could want as a teacher. It offers a true immersive and authentic experience to my students. And I think my students can talk a little bit about it. Recently, we actually completed a pretty large project where we built a two-scale model of the property that actually lit up. You press certain buttons and areas of interest light up. And then we found 6 different areas of merit, and students then did research projects in relation to those areas. And those 6 areas were, you can help me with this, conserved land, educational resources, recreation, natural communities. That was conserved land, how it was required. I'm missing
wildlife corridors.
Wildlife corridors, and
the land use and history.
The land use history. So this is Morgan, and Morgan can probably talk a little bit about, just pick one of them and we could go from there. Have a round table and we can just go through them all.
Okay, well, my group focused on education, and I sent out emails to teachers and some students, and found out that a lot of teachers, when they can get their students out there, they do, because it takes the student's mind off of like the chaos of the school, and it helps with like physical education. It helps like the experiments, and personally, I learn better when I'm doing hands-on things. So actually getting out there and learning it while being in the present, it helped a lot.
And the land is right there.
Yeah,
right,
it's right
at the high
there.
school, right behind the field. So it's very easy to get out from the school and use it as an educational tool.
Yeah.
We're able to have a truly immersive experience in minutes. And that experience is extremely authentic. So commonly, this isn't difficult to do. If I'm working with a concept within biology, wildlife management, etc., I can go out in the winter and find a set of bobcat tracks in 15 minutes. And you know, it's a common adage for high school students, or really any of us, to become complacent within our landscape. But how incredibly unique is it to have a public high school that has bobcats walking through its backyard on the regular? So the landscape, you know, obviously it is an ecological classroom, but it's a literal landscape history map of Vermont's land use history. But we use it for principles within mathematics. We use it for therapeutic purposes. We use it for mapping. We use it for free writes. We use it for just about anything you could possibly imagine in a classroom has a linkage to the property. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of educators that are using it, and we hope that more do in the future.
Sam, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the history piece that Josh was talking about. What are some of the historical sites or situations that you might find hiking up on the trails?
What sticks out to you?
We have, I believe, 2 settlements, or more than that. It was the Carvers and who else was
The
it?
The
Amblers,
Amblers and the Rossiters were in there in some level.
the June family.
June
Yep.
family.
There is a old sugar house where a farm on the other side of the hill that I believe the school required when they bought the whole entire Hawk Hill, that they used the sugar house over there. There's multiple houses and wells that we've gone to and cellar holes.
Mm-hmm.
We found multiple cores, you would say, for the foundations, where they would dig out the stones for the foundations. We have found, have we ever found arrowheads there? I don't think we have.
No, but the property itself is directly adjacent to the Otter Creek, which is commonly referred to as the Indian Road of Vermont. Mm-hmm. So certainly Abenaki peoples used that Hawk Hill area frequently. Mm-hmm. And of course it was the first area that was quote unquote settled by those from southern New England pre-revolution. And those sites are still intact. Obviously, there's no standing buildings, but
There is an interesting note is the cemetery that's up there. The June Cemetery has some headstones that are pre-revolutionary 1700s from the early settlers, from the early families that were there.
it's absolutely fascinating. I think the students can speak to it much better than I, but there really is a feeling of discovery when you're back there. Is there anything you can speak to within that?
I think probably the first time you ever see June Cemetery, you go, wow, some of the stories of people that are buried in there that they could like tell, and some of the tombstones or like the headstones are really amazing. Of like, you wonder how they were like carved out, and how the people like actually lived back then. Mm-hmm. When the first time like Josh took us up in class, I think you brought us up to one of the cellar holes and one of the wells, and that was pretty cool.
There's specifically one that's actually off trail, and I think that's something worth mentioning. Vermont, New England, all across the United States, landscapes that have been, again, using that adage, quote unquote, are harder and harder to find. Mm-hmm. So because of serendipity, because of the fact that the land is somewhat landlocked, Hawk Hill, although conserved and certainly open to the public, has really not seen a lot of institutional development. Mm-hmm. So, you know, without knocking any other way in which historical areas or naturalistic landscapes are interpreted, the interpretation is done in an extremely authentic discovery way. So again, students can feel like Indiana Jones when they're out there. And even though it certainly has been found before, there's nothing there telling you how to feel emotionally or even giving you specific facts without you investing beyond the superficial to find those facts. That's magic.
How does Otter Valley come to own Hawk Hill land?
The Young family. There was 8 siblings, and all but one wanted to sell the land. And Anne Young was the one who was like, "No, we're not selling it." And they offered it to. Did they sell it to the Trust Fund or something.
The Vermont Land
The-
Trust.
yeah,
They
the
contacted the
Trust.
Vermont Land Trust, who that is their mission.
Yeah, and then they offered it to 2 other places, and they turned it down, and then they offered it to Otter Valley, and we took it.
The Vermont Land Trust offered it, yeah. And then they offered it to Otter Valley. And so there's a whole trust deed around that and the
Yes.
conservation plan, and it's
So the Vermont Land Trust, within the warranty deed, there's quite a list of stipulations as to how the property is to be utilized. Kind of going back a little ways, this document here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is actually a trifold pamphlet from when the property was to be developed. And it was going to be
Really?
developed into 30 high-end homes. You can even
Really?
see the perk sites, they're still there. So this was this close to
being commercialized.
being commercialized.
Wow.
And it was because of Ann Young, who's actually an employee at Otter Valley High School, that the land was conserved, and thank goodness it was. And the Land Trust was very interested in the land, notably because of those historical sites that were largely intact, but also because the Route 7 corridor, it's kind of strange to say this when I'm talking about, my homeland of Vermont, but it's developed either with houses or agrarian land, and it's continuing to be developed. Yet there's this green swath that comes really down close to Route 7 and is on both sides of the road, and that is Hawk Hill. So from what we can tell, the Land Trust jumped at the opportunity. However, they didn't want to hold that deed. They wanted to give it to another municipal entity.
Right, right.
So how does Otter Valley oversee the land now? Derek, you
Well,
and
we
Josh are
have,
leading that up.
the school board is responsible for the conservation management plan, and ultimately there's a committee, the Hawk Hill Committee, that's made up of community members as well as school board representation. And they are, as I said, responsible for the management and following through on the recommendations of this conservation plan. It's part of several hundred acres that are owned by the high school. There's a chunk that is this conservation management plan, but it really all flows together from the high school. This is a trail map. There's the high school access from Route 7. You can access the trails there, or there's the old Brandon Road off Carver Street where you can access the trails as well. And it's the high ground that is behind Otter Valley. You may be familiar with the cliffs that are back there. That's kind of kept this land protected from folks, as well as on the other side towards the railroad tracks, which is a boundary of the property. Also has been largely farmland, and it's kept that access to a minimum. So that's another one of the reasons. But we have responsibilities for timber management, managing all the natural aspects of it. There's hunting that we offer permits for. So we try and keep it. We're learning more all the time about how to manage a forest, as well as encourage and develop the public aspect, public access aspect of it as well. So we hope to see people using it for wellness activities and non-motorized recreation activities, and it's really it's a gem of a place. It's a really beautiful place to.
Yeah, years ago, the merits of the property were known as far as a classroom and as far as recreation is concerned, and recreation being a huge part of the Vermont economy, places to participate in outdoor recreation are becoming increasingly pressured. So finding a way in which to maintain a fresh and unique environment for people to recreate while stewarding over a landscape that that allows for ecological integrity becomes increasingly difficult. So we were approached probably about a decade ago and told that Hawk Hill itself was truly a pinch point into something called wildlife corridors, which I truly didn't understand at first. But for an environment to be wholly sound, it needs to limit fragmentation. And Vermont, being a largely forested and treed state, does suffer from excessive fragmentation. So if we look at ortho or overlaid maps, we see that there are these large blocks of forest, but they're not connected. And as we look at the future of both flora and fauna and the relationship to humans within the state, we recognize that that's of a high priority to most Vermonters. Yet this fragmentation thing is staring us in the face. So it's certainly not that Hawk Hill is this expansive wilderness, but what it does do is actually connect from the Adirondacks all the way through the Taconics and into the Champlain Valley, into the Green Mountains, and then actually up into western Maine and into the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec, this green swath which sticks out. So we were able to partner with the Staying Connected Initiative, the Nature Conservancy, Vermont Fish and Wildlife, and for a brief while there was concern as to the future of the land, and folks from those forums came in and talked to us and really informed us as to how valuable this spot was, the last remaining green section that could be found in that.
It's really special also because Otter Valley, that geographic area is really a wetland.
Yeah.
It's the Otter Valley floodplain area, and yet here we have Hawk Hill, which is it's a woodland ecosystem on the high ground in the middle of a wetland.
Yep.
Very unusual.
Yep.
Which gives it a whole different range of species of trees, species of flora and fauna, and one of our responsibilities in terms of protecting the property is to manage the invasive species.
Yeah.
And we've got a grant out that we're anticipating hearing from soon to help us with some efforts to address some of the invasive species that are really pushing out our native species that support the wildlife that is there, and an additional grant that looks from the Vermont Trails program to help us develop, so to speak, I use the word lightly, some of our trail system, and so it's more accessible to folks.
Now, students were also helping with the trail system, is that correct?
Yes.
What are you?
Very much so. Well, we have
Very much so.
We have a dream, right? And perhaps that dream becomes a reality. Do you feel comfortable talking about that at all?
Maybe.
Well, maybe we'd start with some of the animals that we've seen back there, or sign up.
Can recall pretty much everything from a coyote down to field mice. I've tracked bobcat. Probably, I could still see the school. I could chuck a rock and probably hit the sewer plant that's right there. And we've had beavers come right up to our the back of our football field and flood that out. We've had deer come running across our baseball fields down towards the back of the school. And there's lots of bobcat out there. We had this one a couple years ago. His name was Bruce.
Well, it's my nickname.
Beavis.
How'd you know?
And he was a big cat that we tracked for a long time. And then we saw a turkey sign that early in the winter where they had gone out on the ice to see if they could get some water and actually gone through the ice, and it looked like they did not like going through the ice because there was a mess. And we've had buck rubs up there, some really, really nice ones up there. Yeah.
Signs of fisher, black bear,
Fisher back.
even moose, who certainly aren't permanent residents, but they do pass through.
Pass through, yeah, yeah.
So this idea that we have is, again, goes back to how do we balance the ecological integrity of the landscape, the educational authenticity of the landscape, and a desire to share this with other people. That's not easy.
Right.
So the students and I, and really it is their enthusiasm and their passion and their desire to see things stay intact and be exciting and not kind of turn into everywhere America that has motivated this and made me very passionate about it. So the idea was, how do we have an interpretive trail that looks nothing like an interpretive trail?
Yeah, and how do we provide public access to the archaeological resources that are there that are very sensitive?
Yeah.
And we can't allow vandalism, and we can't allow disturbance of soil, those kinds of things in terms of keeping the integrity of those archaeological
So
resources.
simply put, we want people to visit it, but we don't want to advertise it with a neon
I mean, we
sign.
could protect, it's our
Right.
responsibility under the Conservation Management Plan with the Vermont Land Trust. A priority is these archaeological sites. We could gate it and close it,
Could do that.
but it's not what we want to do.
Right.
But how do we protect it and keep it pristine?
And that comes with a fiscal aspect. We all know that school budgets are taxed, and that can be a challenge. Although we do have, but we have an informed workforce that does allow us to do some things in the name of education, truly. So what the students and I came up with was this way in which we could improve the signage of the trail systems that's there, but also stash, if you will, information at specific sites that leaves no infrastructure. So how would that work?
Yeah.
Like, not too many signs where you look at one trail and there's one, and then you look 10 feet and there's another one.
So that's a really good point. We're really trail happy in Vermont right now. That's a good thing. It's stimulating our economy. But at what point are there too many trails? Should you be on one trail and see two other trails from one trail? Is that too much? Is that contributing to forest fragmentation? We actually know the answer. Yes, it is. So how do we limit our impact while still enjoying and learning what's out there? So this incredible opportunity has come to us where our hope is to have student-built information sites within the trail system with 0 signs. So how would that happen? There would be technology that would allow a hiker to have access to a myriad of information by way of a smart device when they are there. That access would combine GPS technology.
Smart devices work up on the land?
Well, interesting. This is not my expertise, but as I'm told, you simply bury a chip in the ground, similar to what would be on your credit card. And when you are within close proximity, your smartphone, if you will, picks up that chip, and you could have everything from mini lectures to reenactments to how-to instructionals.
And yet it's not taking away from the beauty of the place to
And if you
distracting.
choose
And you
not,
can-
you don't want that at all,
Right.
you don't have to have it.
Fabulous.
And you could use GPS coordinates to get close to those sites.
Correct, and most of the sites, as you know, Derek, and you certainly know as well, most of the sites are on the trail system. You could walk by some of them and not know they were there, but they're, most of them are pretty obvious. There's a few trailless gems that will lead to the real intrepid searchers.
Surely, there should be a
It's a
reward.
great vision.
Yeah.
So are you working on this app now? Are you?
Well, what we have done so far is in Morgan's class, I would say the bulk of the last marking period has been spent actually writing a grant through the Vermont Recreational Trails Program to pilot this, and then as well gather information to inform not only ourselves, but the rest of our school community, which we did today. What did we do today?
My exam for class today was we put our 3D model of Hawk Hill and we put all our paperwork up and one by one, like group, we talked about the 6 subjects of, like 6 focuses of Hawk Hill. And we had quite a few people come.
I stopped by. I missed the original presentation,
Yeah.
but I got my own.
Yeah.
Great.
That was fabulous work, and the 2-scale model and the interactive model and then all the research behind it. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So this
So-
is a vibrant land.
It's
It
a
is open.
vibrant land.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. For anybody that's interested, even before we get this this official grant rolling, it's accessible right now. I would say
Yes.
that the trails are clearly marked. Simply come to the Otter Valley parking lot, find the football field. On the south end of the football field, there is an entrance, and there is at least 3 miles of trails there. I believe there's more. And many of them go by the historical sites, and certainly the natural communities found there are absolutely stunning. I highly recommend the spring with wildflowers that are there. And if there was a request for more information, certainly, look one of us up and we can help. But I think any intrepid hikers can be able to do
And
that on their own.
you're trying to make it part of the Park RX program.
Right, there's the
as well.
Park RX program, which is healthcare providers in the region actually write a prescription to folks
To get out and walk.
To get out and walk, and there's a number of places to walk in the Rutland area, as well as Gifford Woods, Bomoseen, Branbury State Park, and the Brandon Recreation Department is coordinating with this, and as we develop our materials, our Hawk Hill trail guides, and we're gonna work with these folks too, so that people can have a real healthy experience and enjoyable experience for a lot of reasons right there in Brandon. And Bill Moore, who's the Brandon Recreation Coordinator, sits on our Hawk Hill Committee, as well as Bill Powers, who's a local historian. We have some great resources on our committee, and we're working really hard to make it a well-known and
Well known,
community.
but without neon, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's a great way to put it.
Without neon.
Without neon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maintaining the integrity. Sam, do you have a place you would recommend, or a favorite place within Hawk Hill that kind of speaks to you?
Probably the June Outlook is probably one of the nicest spots.
An
out there.
incredible overlook that just it gives a sweeping view of the Route 7 corridor, or the Vermont Valley, which is a biophysical region within Vermont. How about you, Morgan?
Yeah, I'd have to go with that too.
Oh,
Like
pick
it's-
another one.
Okay, different one. I like the Sugar Works.
The Sugar Works is fascinating. It shows a very palpable example of agrarian Vermont. You can almost hear, the sugar house and the commotion there.
You can
and
see the big trees.
You can see the big
Yes.
trees. You can.
Oh,
you know,
one of my favorite spots is the big red oak.
There is a monumentous
Tell about
tree
that.
there. There's a monumentous tree. I love what you folks came up with, which is it's a palpable example of the history that has gone on in Hawk Hill for a millennia. And it truly is. The tree is estimated at maybe even over 400 years old. So that's one of the oldest trees in the entirety of Vermont.
Yeah.
So we're out of time, but I hope
Nice
that
job.
we whet some appetites out there to come check out Hawk Hill and take a walk. And thank you, Sam and Morgan and Josh and Derek, for being here today.
Our pleasure. My
Thanks.
pleasure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun.